This is African American History is American History.
I am a little uneasy about the abolishment of slavery in this district. Not that I would be glad to see it abolished, but as to the time and manner of doing it. What I did after very full deliberation and under a heavy and solemn sense of responsibility. I can only trust in God that I have made no mistake. Abraham Lincoln, 16th President of the United States, 1862.
Racial violence in the Reconstruction period took three major forms: urban riots, interpersonal fights, and organized vigilante groups. Several riots occurred in southern cities during Reconstruction. There were major riots in Memphis, Tennessee, and New Orleans, Louisiana in 1866. Lawrence, South Carolina in 1870. Colfax, Louisiana in 1873. Another in New Orleans in 1874. Yazoo City, Mississippi in 1875. And Hamburg, South Carolina in 1876. After the war, southern cities grew rapidly as the newly freed slaves flocked to urban centers. Cities became centers of Republican control. Now, it's important to point out that this was back when the Republicans were the party of liberals and abolitionists, while the Democrats were the conservative white supremacist party. It seems the party of Lincoln is much different today than it was back in 1865, especially when it comes to race. The arrival of black residents and the establishment of biracial politics rubbed white conservatives the wrong way. In nearly every conflict, white conservatives initiated violence in reaction to the Republican rallies or conventions or elections in which black men voted. The death tolls of these conflicts were very high, and the victims were overwhelmingly black. African Americans had fought hard for the Union victory, earning constitutional protections in the form of 3 amendments, including the right to vote. The passage of the 13th Amendment freed 4 million slaves. Congress also passed the 14th Amendment, making the former slaves citizens, and the 15th Amendment granting the right to vote to all male citizens. In addition, Congress passed the Reconstruction Act, which divided the South into 5 military districts. These events were met with violent opposition from white Americans.
Slavery, like all other great systems of wrong, founded in the depths of human selfishness and existing for ages, has not neglected its own conservation. It has steadily exerted an influence upon all around it, favorable to its own continuance, and today it is so strong that it could exist not only without law, but even against law. Custom, manners, morals, religion are all on its side everywhere in the South. And when you add the ignorance and servility of the ex-slave to the intelligence and accustomed authority of the master, you have the conditions not out of which slavery will again grow, but under which it is impossible for the federal government to wholly destroy it, unless the federal government be armed with despotic power to blot out state authority and to station a federal officer at every crossroad. This, of course, cannot be done, and ought not even if it could. The true way and the easiest way is to make our government entirely consistent with itself and give to every loyal citizen the elective franchise, a right and power which will be ever present and will form a wall of fire for his protection. Whatever may be tolerated in monarchical and despotic governments, no republic is safe that tolerates a privileged class or denies to any of its citizens equal rights and equal means to maintain them. What was theory before the war has been made fact by the war. Frederick Douglass, orator, writer, and statesman, 1866.
The slaves were high. They were the highest priced thing. They were the biggest investment. A good slave was $1,200, where a good horse was $100, and a good cow maybe $20, and a pig a couple of dollars, and so there was a price structure back then. Most of the black citizens in this country owe a debt of gratitude to the southern planter for bringing them here. Otherwise, they'd still be in South America or in Africa. We looked upon them more or less as children. And they're part of our home. When I grew up, we always had blacks in the house to cook and clean up and that sort of thing. There wasn't any friction between the blacks and the whites until the Civil Rights Movement came along.
The system of segregation and discrimination throughout the South, known as Jim Crow, was a legal way for whites to maintain their sense of privilege and dominance over people of color. Separate restrooms, separate phone booths, separate water fountains. These laws were sternly put in place to separate blacks and whites from even the slightest amount of contact. From 1876 to 1965, states throughout the South passed laws designed to prevent African Americans from improving their status and achieving equality. These statutes were known as Jim Crow laws, and they were strictly enforced.
The marriage of a white person with a Negro or mulatto or person who shall have 1/8 or more of Negro blood shall be unlawful and void. Mississippi, 1898.
The Corporate Commission is hereby vested with power to require telephone companies in the state of Oklahoma to maintain separate booths for white and colored patrons when there is a demand for such separate booths. Oklahoma, 1915.
All railroads carrying passengers in the state, other than street railroads, shall provide equal but separate accommodations for the white and colored races by providing 2 or more passenger cars for each passenger train, or by dividing the cars by a partition so as to secure separate accommodations. Tennessee, 1891.
It shall be unlawful for any white person to be handcuffed or otherwise chained or tied to a Negro prisoner. Arkansas, 1903.
All circuses, shows, and tent exhibitions to which the attendance of more than one race is invited shall provide not less than 2 ticket offices and not less than 2 entrances. Louisiana, 1921.
Marriages are void when one party is a white person and the other is possessed of 1/8 or more Negro, Japanese, or Chinese blood. Nebraska, 1911.
Negroes are to be served through a separate branch or branches of the County Free Library, which shall be administered by a custodian of the Negro race under the supervision of the county librarian. Texas, 1923.
The schools for white children and the schools for Negro children shall be conducted separately, and it shall be unlawful for any colored child to attend any white school, or any white child to attend a colored school. Florida, 1904.
Every employer of white or Negro males shall provide for such white or Negro males reasonably accessible and separate toilet facilities. Alabama, 1927.
Any public hall, theater, opera house, motion picture show, or place of public entertainment which is attended by both white and colored persons shall separate the white race and the colored race. Virginia, 1925.
No colored barber shall serve as a barber to white women or girls. Atlanta, Georgia, 1926.
All marriages between a white person and a Negro, or between a white person and a person of Negro descent to the 3rd generation inclusive, are forever prohibited and shall be void. Maryland, 1918.
All marriages between a white person and a Negro, or between a white person and a person of Negro descent to the 4th generation inclusive, are hereby forever prohibited. Florida, 1919.
Any person presenting for public acceptance or general information arguments or suggestions in favor of social equality or of intermarriage between whites and Negroes shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and subject to a fine not exceeding $500 or imprisonment not exceeding 6 months, or both fine and imprisonment at the discretion of the court. Mississippi, 1920.
The officer in charge shall not bury or allow to be buried any colored persons upon grounds that a part or used for the burial of white persons. Georgia, 1902.
It shall be unlawful to conduct a restaurant or other place for the serving of food in the city at which white and colored people are served in the same room, unless such white and colored persons are effectually separated by a solid partition extending from the floor upward to a distance of 7 feet or higher, and unless a separate entrance to the street is provided. Alabama, 1927.
It shall be unlawful for any amateur white baseball team to play on any vacant lot or baseball diamond within 2 blocks of a playground devoted to the Negro race, and it shall be unlawful for any amateur colored baseball team to play baseball within 2 blocks of any playground devoted to the white race. Georgia, 1929.
No person or corporation shall require any white female nurse to nurse in wards or rooms in hospitals, either public or private, in which Negro men are placed. Alabama, 1910.
Any white woman who shall suffer or permit herself to be got with child by a Negro or mulatto shall be sentenced to the penitentiary for not less than 18 months. Maryland, 1924.
Any person who shall rent any part of any such building to a Negro person or a Negro family when such building is already in whole or in part in occupancy by a white person or white family shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. Louisiana, 1929.
It shall be unlawful for a Negro and white person to play together or in company with each other in any game of cards, dice, dominoes, or checkers. Birmingham, Alabama, 1930.
A Negro male under no circumstances is allowed to light a white female cigarette. To do so leads to familiarity. Alabama, 1928.
The laws you just heard may seem ridiculous today, but in the southern and border states at the time, Jim Crow was much more than just a series of over-the-top anti-black people laws. It was a way of life. Jim Crow was a legal tool used to chip away at the psyche of African Americans and relegate them to the status of second-class citizens. Did you know that African American men and women could be arrested for displaying affection in public, whether it be kissing or just holding hands? Whites felt it was offensive, so they made it against the law. Negroes were not allowed to call whites by their first names, and it was also against the law for whites to use titles of respect like Mr., Mrs., Miss, Sir, or Ma'am when addressing Negroes. To do so would only help to encourage a false sense of equality. Whites who knew a particular African American could call him or her by their first name. If not, boy or girl were the accepted titles when addressing Negroes, and it didn't matter if they were 8 or 80. Throughout the South, during Jim Crow, all white motorists had the right of way at all intersections, and it was against the law for a Negro to curse at, laugh derisively at, or call a white person a liar. Since the early days of America's history, the strands of segregation, discrimination, and racism were so tightly woven into the very fabric of Southern society and culture that even today, they still remain firmly in place.
This has been African American History is American History.